afternoon, good afternoon. Peace, peace, peace. Peace, peace, everybody. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Haki Ami here, the Success Scholar. Yeah. What's up, what's up? Thank you all. Ready to go live here. Right. All right. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. Haki Ami here, the Success Scholar, ready here at eLife. Make sure we are up. I see we up on my page. Let me make sure we're on eLife Media Group here. All right. Okay, there we go. Let me get a quick share here and share that to my, as we get started, brothers and sisters. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, listening in to this broadcast here. Ready to go to another level with this discussion that's much needed in the community. I know the title of this broadcast, is a very interesting one, of course, but we are going to have a conversation about the Peacock elite and a case study of the Congressional Black Caucus. So as I continue, and I'm going to, do a couple things and get started here. Shout out to my YouTube peoples at home, but let me get started here and get this going. But I want to definitely thank my last week's guest for joining me. Who did I have in here last week? Oh my gosh, am I having a brain? I'm sorry. Okay, I did a book review on Damon Dash and Damon John's book, Culture Vultures and Power Broke. So it was really good, really good. Got a lot of good feedback and made people want to go out and get both of those books. So I'm very happy that people are getting copies, and definitely check out that interview. Certainly encourage you to do so. And we're gonna have a good conversation. But first, before I continue in this show, I want to mention that that I, as an organizer, I got for candidate for governor, the candidate for the Democratic ticket, Mr. Ben Jealous. He will be at the Congressional Black Caucus, and he will be on the Carl Nelson show. That is this coming Thursday. On 1450 a.m. WOL. So I organized to make that happen. So listen up, listen in. That's this Thursday, September the 13th at 5 p.m. or 1700 for those who are military folk and out there in the world. And so what else is going on, man? I had a conversation before I get into my broadcast. I want to mention, sometimes as I continue to organize, you may see me show up at some places different, or I keep showing up. That's kind of what individuals, being a success scholar, you have to do. And not that you're going to just continue to show up and just play rookie games and just kind of be a part of the rat pack or whatever. But sometimes you have to really expand your network and your market. And so as I was having a conversation just rather recently about an upcoming event, several events. I was sharing about the Mike Roberts, coming to Baltimore area to Morgan State University, and looking forward to that. For those who may not know, I just posted an article on CNN. It's entitled "The Billionaire Brothers" or something, a billionaire empire or something to that effect. So I just say when Mike Roberts talk, everybody should listen. So don't perpetrate to me like you don't need to show up until you made $1 billion. I'm not saying that that's everybody's goal, but I just happen to think that I need to get a little increase in my cash flow just because I feel that I deserve it. And so that's what happens when you show up and show out and be in the spaces with people of such a significant net worth. Sometimes it just rubs off on you. And sometimes, who knows, they see you and they may wonder, like, man, I see you a few places. You might be somebody, huh? So I'm just saying there's a reason when you show up, and this is from being a real researcher and organizer, that there's sometimes when some people talk, you should be listening. Uh, and that's just how it is. But also coming up here, Lisa Nichols is coming to the DMV. RISO, of course, being a speaker, I believe, she made a tremendous impact in the speaking realm. So I'll be there, and not every event I go with the same strategy or the same intent, but just networking is a part of the Success Scholar movement, and eventually things will manifest, absolutely, without a doubt, without a question in my mind. When you show up around the right people, things just continue to happen. So, as well as Dr. Randall Pickett is coming to the DMV. So, that's how it's going to go down. Yeah. And so, looking forward to that. But I just wanted to drop a few of those before I get into the rest of this broadcast here. Looking forward to really having this discussion on this Peacock Elite. Now, this is from this book, The Peacock Elite. And the Peacock Elite, let me show it, everybody, show it right there. A case study of the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, as I get into this, folks, many people know I was elected to the Baltimore State Central Committee. Now, some people may not understand, why I would do that this late in my career. Why didn't I start off, earlier, trying to do different things? But sometimes when you are assessing the dynamics of history and power relations, you realize that you have to be the person to step things up and make things happen. And so, with that being said, it is essential that I share this, and for those who are serious entrepreneurs or individuals that are interested in the power relations of this country, and and where things are going. I just believe that it's our responsibilities to be aware. It's certainly our responsibilities to be aware of the dynamics of the leadership, for instance. So this topic, leadership, history, and black empowerment at the crossroads. So that's what the title of this discussion is going to be. And so some years ago, I actually got this book that I think is very essential for instance, individuals at that level, or policy makers, or even individuals at the state level. And shout out to Dr. Delegate Bilal Ali, who actually got this book as well. He generally, when I suggest a particular book, he generally hops on it. And I appreciate him for being a well-rounded reader like that. So that's a good attribute to have. So with that being said, let me get into this book. So this first, I always try to tell, this came out, I think maybe, let me guess, 2015? No, my gosh, 2010, it's been that long? Oh, man, I thought maybe I got it like a little later. I know I got this book a little later than that, but let me so it opens with a subjective case study. So it tells you this is quite subjective. There's no objectivity to this, so I felt that it's really an interesting read, and I read it maybe 3-4 years ago. For those who may not know, I've been attending the Congressional Black Caucus over the past, I'd say about 7 to 8 years. And, the past, I'd say 5, I really had the opportunity to go like a little bit more. I had the opportunity to attend, like all day. And before that, I usually just have gone to the different workshops. But I also have seen, well, let me just first say, one time a brother called me, and this is why, when people think they know what goes on there, and yes, there are different types of activities that go on, but, for those who are serious students, we are there for the knowledge. But I'll just give one example, for instance, of what I actually got from going. A brother out of New Orleans, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, he called me. It was early in the morning, probably about 6 o'clock. And he said, "Brother, I missed my flight. I'm in New Orleans, and I'm supposed to be at the Congressional Black Caucus for a workshop." He's a patent, he worked in a patent office. He's an engineer by training, but he worked in a patent office for some years in DC, and he really wanted to go to this event. So he wanted me to go and get some of the information, the intel from this. And I'm sitting there looking at it. I'm laying in the bed, man. I'm like, man, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. You really want me to get up and drive to DC? Although I had anticipated going a little later, I did not anticipate going that early in the day, in the morning. So he's like, "Man, it's 8 o'clock. It's at 8 o'clock, bruh." So I was like, all right, bro. So I just got up, took a shower, quick shower, and made my way down to the caucus. And I, it was a respect thing. So I realized that from the information that I got from there, it was very insightful and valuable global business information. And that's what I got. Now, some people don't want to see or find out about these different workshops that go on, but fortunately for me, that was an eye-awakening experience, because sometimes you get some serious people that have global businesses, and you don't really have any more direct access to them, and you don't hear them speak about, you don't have to hear them speak about different issues. And so that was an experience that I had, just people willing to share, because it was the Congressional Black Caucus. So that's, just one of my, experiences that I actually had. So I just, encourage people to do your own due diligence and really try to connect the dots. But let me just, read the forward. The Peacock Elite is a case study by former Congressman Major Owens, covering his 24 years in the Congress as a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. It is a priceless, intimate view of the true insider. It qualifies as the best of participant observation research, a type of research which comes from behavioral, social, and policy sciences, and which is put to attractive and original use by author Owens. This is a fine and highly readable piece of work which shall be remembered as one of the strongest autobiographical researches treatises of our generation. It is already an important historical document and will remain one for many years to come. So here's the book, The Peacock Elite. So let me, it says the book contains a chronicle of legislative blunders and goofs, which are clearly and objectively detailed and analyzed. So he goes through different policy things and different personalities. Heads get knocked, nasty truths get told. He recognizes and praises the extraordinary accomplishments of the CBC, while at the same time he highlights some costly mistakes. The book also details the relationships between the CBC and a number of important constituencies, such as the labor movement, the Clinton administration, Jewish leaders, The international arena, the federal government departments such as the education, labor, state, and federal departments also detailed are the relationships between the CBC and important organizations such as the Urban League and the NAACP. The book, in its context, contains numerous concrete suggestions for future goals and accomplishments of the CBC. Okay, so so let me get to why he calls it Peacock mania, and the Peacock elite. Many people know what a peacock is, but let me get to it. It's kind of funny, but how he talks about it. But in order to evaluate the performance of, and I kind of skipped chapter. Let me first go through some chapters. Setting the CBC. He got an intro. Setting the CBC's performance goals, performance standards, the destructive power of peacock mania, chronology of pivotal highlights, major blunders and triumphs, web of permanent policy positions, dollar analysis of the CBC power. See, this is what serious people need to be understanding. The dollar analysis of the CBC's power. Some people will make statements about, voting and should we, talk to the Congressional Black Caucus, and should we go to the Congressional Black Caucus? Should, we vote? And, and this is why, I had to mention this book in such a, kind of put it out there, because, and I think that's the role, of what people can kind of quantify, the potential. So also the CBC in the international arena. Now, although Mr. Baker, Rashawn Baker, was not able to win the governorship of the state of Maryland, I know that, for instance, he opened up opportunities for various businesses traveling to places like Brazil and China. And I know that Nigeria was rather recent, and he wasn't necessarily a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. So I just realized that, for what it's worth, there's potential to kind of aggregate sharp and smart entrepreneurs. So also the CBC and the education emergency, talk about Jesse Jackson, Newt Gingrich, the CBC and the CBC Foundation. So just so that people know, the CBC Foundation is who puts on the Legislative Black Caucus weekend. All right, so there's difference. There's, they separated that for a reason, and they talk about that in this particular book. The CBC versus the Blue Dog Coalition. So for those who may not know, the Blue Dogs is what is called the Democrats, or the Dinos, Democrats in name only. That's something that needs to be understood. So proposed bold future agenda items, and the countering the internal balkanization threat. Talking about the balkanization of the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, let me read what he talks about Peacock Mania. So, and he names names, and I know that some of the caucus members may have been a little upset with this book, but he's retired, so he doesn't necessarily care. And for me, I feel like, we need to we need to have some conversations. We need to have some conversations. I mean, I'm just the baddest brother to incite these conversations. And so, in order to evaluate the performance of the CBC and its individual members, we have chosen to adopt the Peacock as a poetic unit of measurement. I'm sorry, I might laugh during this. In the section above, we have emphasized the fact that the Peacock personality traits, or the Peacock learned capabilities, are necessary components for leaders to achieve productive balance, and modest amounts applied as a means to achieve worthy ends as most highly desirable tool. We have even postulated that the absence of this capability, let me finish reading this. can greatly cripple the performance of the wisest leaders with greatest vision. As in most human qualities, moderation is desirable goal. At the extreme, however, a peacock personality traits become destructive mania. And that's actually the subtitle of this book, The Destructive Power of Peacock Mania. So let me kind of get into what, if I can remember where that was, where he talks about what a peacock is. And maybe it was, I thought it was where I actually left off, but let me see. Okay, he talked about this mania is a state of mind dishonestly advocating vague values but obsessed with the power to manipulate responses, to brainwash, to dazzle, deceive, and stampede. Any official not grounded by a sense of mission, an ideology or philosophy of public service who becomes consumed by his own mastery of this style assumes a persona which is more of a menace than a purposeful leadership. The ranks of these preening public figures flashing their prunes have mushroomed to a size which justify the designation the predator peacock elite. So he talks about a peacock, and I was trying to find that particular part where, you know, the peacock is always like showing their different colors to try to get attention in a mating context. And he describes, and he went back in history and talked about how, you know, black leaders were chosen, actually. And I think that's, you know, essential. So the defining characteristic of the predator peacock mindset is its lack of a sincere allegiance to any group mission. An extreme peacock is dedicated primarily, almost totally, to preening its prune. Consciously, unconsciously, the predator peacock camouflages and secrets its attitudes and intentions in the closets. And in self-defense, their peers must develop and maintain a high level of awareness. The rule requires that fellow members must be alert or be manipulated. Hear that? The rule requires that fellow members must be alert or manipulated. In many ways, a portion of the behavior of a predatory peacock cannot remain subtle, mysterious, or conspiratorial. Bold and highly visible and outrageous actions are inevitable components of the predator peacock game plan. Now, before I get into that, let me I wanted to mention about that peacock elite. I'm sorry, the peacock mania. All right, but let me get back here. Let me go to this intro. When we considered that Congressman Adam Clayton Powell was not allowed to eat in the dining room of House of Representatives until 1965, it should not be hard to imagine the hostile environment encountered by the first black seeking to perform in legislators in Washington from 1865, the year President Lincoln was assassinated, to the year 1901, when the last ex-slave congressman, George White, saw his two-term expire while he stood alone on the floor of the House chamber. In 2006, the 109th Congress closed. The black members of the Congress enjoyed extraordinary influence, high visibility, and growing political clout. In harmony with the high, fast-paced Washington mainstream culture and style, the majority of the CBC members parade proudly as members of the dazzling peacock elite. In the Capitol and far beyond the Beltway, the CBC has achieved widespread recognition, and such acknowledgement is the prime ingredient of power in America. Whether they are for them or against them, opinion makers and majority of the voters know this unique body exists, particularly in the last 24 years. The CBC's mastery of media opportunities must be given very high marks. Without such a peacock posture, power in today's America is not possible. But a highly visible media presence alone does not achieve true power. Okay? Let me repeat that again. But a high visibility media presence alone does not achieve true power. The question proposed here for deep exploration is what life and management style must there be to complement the popular Peacock ethic? All right. So let me digress and get into this other particular piece that I want to read from. Uh, but I just wanted to open with that piece, and I'll share a little bit more about that. But let me read this. It's called Black Power in Politics. Much have been made in America of the rapid increase of black elected officials from about 100 in 1964 to nearly 9,000 today. The increment considered an indicator of the growing black political strength. But black elected officials emerging from a people who constitute roughly 13% of the population represent only 1.7% of all elected officials. And they overwhelmingly occupy municipal level positions in the mostly small or medium-sized towns. After 139 years, the Black American freedom, the United States Senate is still 100%, still 100% white. Now, a single black member, that was, I'm not sure when this, but there's Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. But all right, the prophesized political revolution of empowerment has never materialized for the Black America, owing to a combination of forces, including the schemes of white supremacy, the naivety of the black electorate, and the utter dependence of black politicians on white management and financing. The few high-profile politicians who have been able to manage, if not overcome, these mighty obstacles, and who have used their prominence to advance causes and issues central to the black people are also the ones targeted by the government and media for public ridicule, character, and physical assassination, government sting operations, and ultimate ruin. The collective record of the black politicians proves that they have a fundamental misunderstanding about the purpose and function of true political power. Politicians, as a rule, divide up tax money to be split among respective constituency. They are primarily fundraisers whose role is to secure government financing, remove the legal barriers for the plans and strategies of the business interests that funded their campaigns. Among whites, the effectiveness of politicians is judged by the number of jobs and improvements they bring to their district through the public works projects and government contracts awarded to local businesses. White politicians are not seen as leaders in the charismatic or moral sense in which black politicians are often cast. As Theodore Cross bluntly points out, the politically powerful are able to vote themselves government jobs, subsidies, franchises, protective contracts, and at times wonderful Christmas trees of economic benefits. Black politicians have no independent black business class as partners in any economic development program, so they go into office with a voting base of support largely from organized black churchgoers who expect moral crusades rather than economic community developers. So that's pretty much, what I have seen over the years, and that pretty much makes it plain, just in terms of the potential for power or lack of thereof. And this is why, I'm going to ask. I'm going to need individuals to for those that are serious, about understanding the dynamics of wealth in this society and throughout the world. You seriously have to be an organizer to understand this. And this is why, it's a different ballgame now, and I appreciate my support of my senator in my district, as well as the delegate in my district, and I just had a conversation where I called in Mr. Hayes, and Mr. McCrae was on a particular show today, and I had a little joke for him, but I think that we have to truly understand, the history of these things, and understand what our potential for influence is, and yes, sometimes we may have to start locally in our advocacy, and as well as sometimes it takes showing up to the Congressional Black Caucus, and having some of these conversations. And so this is what I believe sincerely may be lacking, on many different leaders that may speak on these issues but have not necessarily taken action. All right, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. Let me just talk about the foundation. So for those who may, as I mentioned, the foundation sponsors this week of event. The Congressional Black Caucus Foundation was established in 1976 as a nonpartisan, nonprofit public policy research and educational institute, sponsoring the first legislative conference and flagship dinner demonstrated the need for this nonprofit entity. Its stated purposes is to serve as the premier organization that comprehensively creates, identifies, analyzes, and disseminates policy-oriented information critical to advancing African American community towards economic, education, and health equity. That's the intended purposes, right? So, again, if that's the intended purposes, individuals are going to have to establish some kind of independent way to monitor this. And several years ago, some organizations actually did have report cards. And that was one of the things I did. I went to the Black Caucus, and we gave out hundreds and I don't know, maybe thousands of them some years ago. And I don't think that some people like getting some of the grades that they got, but it was fun. I learned a lot. I learned some of the issues, but I appreciate passing out all those flyers and some people looking at you like, who are you? Who are you? Why are you grading us? But, that's kind of what independent, healthy advocates do. And this is where, respectfully, where the conversations, have to happen. So, to serve as the policy-oriented catalyst that educates future leaders and promotes collaborations among legislators, business leaders, minority-focused organizational leaders, and organized labor to effect positive and sustained substantiated change in the African American community. All right, four strategic roles are envisioned: information broker, developer of strategic partnerships, mobilizer of the public, and policy education provider. In more recent years, the CBC has spun into two additional working groups. The CBC PAC raises funds to be dispersed primarily to candidates who are black or respective of the black constituents or representative of black constituents. Among other regularly sponsored activities, CBCR, the development of coordinated plans and strategies through existing CBC Task Force and Brain Trust, the implementation of plans with the introduction of specific legislations or alternatives to existing bills. Included is the monitoring and to eliminate unfavorable provisions through amendments and to add favorable provisions. So, ongoing exploration of mutual interests with foundations, businesses, and other private sector entities. So those were some of the early movements and interests that they had. And I think that hopefully what's going to happen over the next couple days, as myself and several others make our way over, it's going to be essential for others who, kind of have a critical, independent, both business as well as political insights to continue to organize and continue to network and continue to learn with people that have experience, on the ground experience. And you can't tell me that you are interested in, black progress and you may not necessarily this book, but haven't necessarily gone to the caucus and really develop a more national strategy, a national plan of sorts, and I do believe, of course, in working locally, but I also believe that things can be done, just with having some knowledge, right? It may not necessarily be, it may not necessarily be the billionaire in the room, but it's good to show up around one like Mike Roberts, who will be in Baltimore in a couple weeks. But I think that we need to be in a room, is what I'm saying. So let me look at this part. Setting the standards. They talk about the physical and security of the United States. Congresspersons are well covered. They are supplied reasonable staff and resources. Most members have constituents with reasonable performance expectations. Unfortunately, the circumstances of political affairs and the economic and social conditions within most voting rights districts produce a situation where expectations raise far beyond the call of duty. Since constituents of these districts must live with a continuing paucity of people with power, their demands on the highest ranking decision makers are enormous, sometimes monstrous. The embrace of this most profound fact is the first performance requirement for each CBC member. So this is an Ebony Magazine article by Izzy Davis and Lerone Bennett talking about, this was at the Black Political Convention, I believe they're talking about 1972. I'm not sure how many delegates came, maybe 8,000 different delegates came from all over the country. So that was, a very history-making event. And let me just show this part. They were talking about President Obama, I believe. Certainly, in the last 2.5 years, history has been changed in a significant way, not highly visible, but still occurs. The Congressional Black Caucus has also experienced changes. Some of these case projections set forth 2 years ago are evolving into operational truth. My major remaining concern, however, is the stagnation of the low quality of life still endured by the black masses. The unique mission of the CBC is floundering. Now, this is what he said at his opening statement. The unique mission of the CBC is floundering. The survival contradiction faced by blacks in America is the fact that we are seated near the world's greatest banquet table of resources, but systematically denied opportunities to acquire meaningful morsels for our community place. We were released from slavery in a state of near starvation and condemned to rehabilitate ourselves. With the present occupation of the White House by Barack Obama, can enough windows of opportunity now be created to halt the escalating backward drift amongst blacks? And he goes on and talk about some statistics: the accelerated widening gap between black and white, the accelerated widened gap between black and white income, the long-term higher unemployment rates for blacks, the disproportionate but still escalating incarceration rates for blacks, the obliteration of welfare programs for the needy, the dramatic decreases in public school funding, the decreases in percentage of eligible blacks attending colleges. So many of these issues that I sincerely would hope would be on the agenda, and it's going to take, some real thinkers, some real organizers, some real workers that, are willing to sacrifice, something to sacrifice their time, sacrifice their good, cushiony positions to, shall I say, organize and educate and create independent opportunities. So this is what I've been doing over the years. What I consider finishing the work of the likes of Dr. Amos Wilson, who laid out some of this. But it's just amazing how I believe if, for instance, he would have been alive, he certainly would have, or he certainly would be reading books like this and showing up, right? And really connecting the dots on some of this great work. And so I'm going to kind of begin to wrap up here. I know I said I was going to do a short show today, but I wanted to show everybody this Peacock Elite. Get yourself a copy. Yes, you can get one from me. And let me read the back of it. Perhaps no other American ethnic group needs a CBC type of organization as a beacon and advocate and the legislative rail splitter. The evidence assembled in this study confirms the truth of this unusual need for African Americans. Since a well-educated populace is the primary foundation for the mastery of our increasingly complex society in ways that bolster our national security. The education function and expenditures of our government should be elevated to a level parallel to the military budget. The argument that the responsibility for the direction of the African diaspora should devolve upon the CBC is powerful, since we have a constitutionally authorized tent on the palace ground at the current seat of world power. All right? And then he talks about the predator peacock. A predator peacock elected as president of the CBC without guiding obligations of an improved plan, bold plan, could render monumental damage to the 2-year term. They elected for 2 years. The potential collective power of the CBC is 1,000 times greater than it was founding in 1971. Maximizing that power requires an updated and more thoroughly reconstructed operation. Is the conclusion of this organized an unprecedented structure within the legislative apparatus of the American democracy can complete a nonviolent liberation process to eradicate the last gross deformities caused by slavery and unrelenting oppression that followed. This is definitely not an impossible dream. So, with that being said, again, I know this book, it goes into, kind of naming names of pretty much all the members of the Congressional Black Caucus. I know many may not like their particular portrayal of being a peacock or a peacock elite or maniac, if you will. But, they talk about the Anti-Defamation League in this group, the African American Heritage Museum, of course, the Jimmy Carter years, the Bush years, the empowerment zones, Brown versus Board of Education, even counterintelligence program, the CBC Foundation, of course, and Shirley Chisholm's run, Jesse Jackson's run, the Congress of Racial Equality, Ebony Magazine, what else? Defense Departments, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Coordinating Committee, Democratic caucuses, Democratic leadership councils, Federal Reserve Board, Federalist FEMA, elementary education, education and labor committees, many of the different committees, actually Harold Ford talks about GI bills and, Barry Goldwater. So it's kind of Heritage Foundation, relationships with India, Jesse Jackson, I mentioned that, Andrew Jackson, Jewish leaders, House Democratic leadership, House Legislative Services Organizations, HUD, Housing and Urban Development, Barbara Lee, Sheila Jackson Lee, Paula Jones, Joe Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, all damn Kennedys, Henry Kissinger, a few others, Donald Payne. So talks about a few different people. So that's all I have. I'm gonna be out here, y'all. So definitely check that out. Holler at me. Look me up on Success Scholar, HAKI website, Success Scholar Haki, or hit me up on Twitter, Success Scholar 1, as well as Success Scholar on Instagram. Stay connected. Get my books. Get my documentaries that's on my website as well. And soon we're going to be back talking about Omarosa's book. I'm going to have a special guest joining me to discuss that. So I just say stay connected. We're going to move. So for those that are coming to the Congressional Black Caucus, definitely be present Thursday at 5 p.m. when Ben Jealous is interviewed by Carl Nelson. So holler at the Success Scholar. Peace.